Hello, I'm on my Todd this morning. This is day one of what is probably going to be a 2 or 3 or maybe even a 4-day vlog. Let's see how it goes. I'm on my own at the moment because this is about the bees, and I'm going to show you the whole process of me extracting honey, from checking out which hive I'm going to get it from to actually taking the honey and then extracting it and filtering it and putting it in jars. The whole lot, the whole shebang. So I've got a plan of how I think it will go. Knowing my luck and how the bees behave, it probably won't go to plan. But let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that by the end of this vlog, we've got a jar of honey to show you. I've only been beekeeping for just over a year, but I love researching the art of apiculture or apiculture, however you want to pronounce it. I learn something new about the bees every day that I spend time with them, and it surprised me and Sean, I think, just how fascinated I've become with them. It's quite the turnaround from this nervous Nelly who used to flap about every time a bee came near me to this calm, coordinated, super cool student of beekeeping. Alright, maybe not so super cool. It's been a steep learning curve, especially this year with the bees. When I got this colony, at the moment it's got 11 frames in it. When I first got it, it had 5 frames, and only 3 of those 5 frames had bees on them and brood and stores or anything like that. And my priority when I first got them was to try and get these new colonies as big as possible to fill out the frames. And then they'd survive the winter and we could get honey next year. So the very last thing I wanted, after a few weeks of good weather, on the day they arrived, was for the weather to just turn. And it did. The whole of July was really bad. The average temperature here where we are in July was only 13.6 degrees Celsius, which is very close to the limit where the bees want to go out foraging. And they can't forage when the flowers are wet, so they couldn't go out and get nectar and pollen for most of July. I think it rained every single day in July except for about 3 or 4 days. It's quite sad really that Scotland's honeybee population has declined every single year continuously for the last decade or so. In fact, 10 years ago in 2013, the honeybee population in Scotland fell by 75%. 3/4 of them just gone in 1 year. And most of that is blamed on the wetter springs and summers, which means the bees find it more difficult to start increasing the numbers and going out and getting forage. It's amazing what a couple of weeks of sunshine and nice weather can do. This hive in particular has gone from filling 3 or 4 frames to now filling all 11 frames in the brood box, which is underneath this one. This is a honey super. And just in the last 4 weeks, they've gone from 10 completely empty frames of foundation, and it's already absolutely full of honey. So if we look at this frame that's only got a small portion of it capped, you can see a lot of the cells are still open, and the bees will fan the nectar to try and lower the water content from about 80% once it's put in there down to about 20%. And once it's down to 20% or lower, then they'll start to cap it off with this wax cover. That seals the honey in place and preserves it. Now in the brood box below, they'd eat that over the winter and use it as stores. So we don't take the honey that's down there in the brood box. We only take the honey that's surplus to their requirements, which is up here in this super box. If the water content is above 20%, it increases the risk of yeasts and mold growing in the honey, even when it's been jarred, and that can start to ferment. And you'll know when honey is fermenting because it smells pretty bad, and I'll tell you what, it tastes pretty bad too. It goes off, you wouldn't want to eat it. Ideally, the water content of the honey, when we take it for extraction, should be between about 15.5% and 18%. But how do we gauge how much water's in there? Well, we have a little gadget for that. And this is it, it's called a refractometer. And we use this to test the water content of the honey. The amount of sugar in the honey affects how light reacts to it as it passes through the prism. Now the refractometer measures that movement of light and correlates the figure to a scale that we read as a percentage. Sounds quite complicated. In reality, it's really easy to use. All I do is smear some honey onto the prism, just making sure that the whole prism's covered. Then I'll close this daylight plate and make sure there's no dry spots or bubbles underneath it. Then I'll look into the eyepiece, and after about 30 seconds, it'll give me an accurate reading of the water content. First sample we took, which was from under some of the capped honey, came in at 16.2%, which is, quite frankly, amazing. That's really low. That's the sign of some really good honey. I'm really pleased to see that, holding back my excitement. I don't know if you can tell. So the second sample was from some uncapped honey right at the very edge of the frame where it's likely to be a little bit more watery. And even that came in at just over 17%, 17.2%, which again is well under the 20, it's even well under the 18. So again, really good honey and ready to go. But what I don't want to do is take this box away while there's thousands, probably tens of thousands of bees in here. Otherwise it's going to end up a little bit like a Benny Hill sketch. Me running away with the box and thousands of bees chasing after me. I've read about a few ways of removing the honey super boxes from the hives without making them too angry or causing them too much stress, which I don't want to do. I mean, think about it. It's taken them weeks and millions of bee hours and bee miles to build up those frames with honey. So they're not just going to let me walk up to it, pick it up and walk away, are they? I need a way of getting the bees out of that box for a start and then getting it away from them, causing as little stress as possible. Now I've seen these things online on beekeeping websites called clearer boards. It's basically a board, a piece of wood, and it's got this plastic cage that's built into it. What it does is the bees can come out of the super back into the hive, but they find it difficult to get back up again because of the shape of this plastic cage. Now it looks really good. I'm going to try it. The thing is, it costs money, and I'm going to need more than one when the rest of the honey starts coming in. And I'm not going to lie, we're struggling a bit at the moment. So I think what I'm going to do is see if Sean and myself can come up with our own clearer board as best as we can with some bits of wood we've got lying about the croft. Luckily, we've got some offcuts of wood from building Sherlock's Muse, and they're just right for making our clearer boards. First thing we've got to do is cut each one into 46cm squares. Then we measure the centre of the board and drill a hole that's going to be wide enough to encourage the bees to go into it. Next, I'm sanding the board and making sure that that centre hole is as smooth as possible. I don't want the bees hurting themselves on any sharp splinters. Then it's into my bee barn where I can add the plastic cage and glue and nail the edging strips. Here it is, one finished clearer board. So the little plastic cage, that rhombus cage, that only cost me a couple of quid. I bought quite a few of them because I'll probably need them next year. The board and the frame that's on the board is just offcuts from what Sean's been using on the Muse. So, I mean, overall, if I was to put a cost to it, I would say less than a £5 plus half an hour in making them. So to buy these ready-made, which look a little bit smoother, but I don't think the bees are bothered about that, you pay anything between about 16 and 40 quid just for them ready-made. So when I'm building half a dozen of these this year and probably a dozen or more of them next year, you can see that's going to be quite a cost saving. So how does it work then? Well, this sits underneath the honey super box on top of the queen excluder. And hopefully the bees will come down from the super honey frames into this hole and down into this plastic cage underneath. Now you can see it's like a rhombus shape, and right at the very end there's two little escape points. So the bees will come out of these escape points and back down into the brood box. Hopefully not the other way around. What we don't want them to do is come back up and into the super. Now I'm not expecting to clear the super altogether, but even if we just kind of half the amount of bees in there, it's going to make my job easier when it comes to taking the honey supers out of the box. Because I'd already been in the hive to check the water content of the honey, the bees weren't impressed when I went back to put the clearer board on the hive. It doesn't help that they're really protective of their honey stores, and who can blame them? Other bees and wasps could come and rob the honey. And further south in England and Wales, they've also got the added threat of European and Asian hornets, which are becoming a major problem, especially this year and as the climate changes. Anyway, I've added the board now, put the hive back together. I'll come back tomorrow evening, see if it's worked. Hello.
I'm suited up.
He's under there.
I'm ready.
This is a strange one. It's been over 24 hours since we put the clearer board on the hive underneath the super. It's now just coming up to about 8:30 in the evening of the day after. This is quite late. I don't think we've ever filmed this late, have we?
I'm usually in my pyjamas.
Since we were on the boat. So why are we filming at 8:30 on an evening? Well, when we want to take the super away... Oh, by the way.
What?
A viewer asked us, why are they called supers?
Right.
And I actually didn't know, so I did some research.
Okay.
And super comes from... It's short for superstructure.
Right.
Which is like things that you put on.
Yes.
So we put them on the hive. And it's also derived from the Latin for supra, which means above. So it's a structure that you put above the hive.
Really clever.
I've learned something. Anyway, back to the topic at point.
Yes.
We all know, well, I know from experience, that the hive we're taking this super from can get quite angry sometimes.
Grr.
You've seen them before in previous videos getting quite angry with me. It's the same hive we're taking the super off. Now, I don't want to douse them in smoke because the honey will then taste like smoke.
We don't want smoky honey.
We don't want smoky honey. And there's other ways you can get the bees off using like blowers, which don't really hurt the bees, but I just don't want them to be as out and feisty as they normally are. Now, at this time on an evening, they've calmed down. Most of them are in there, which is bad for me because I prefer them all to be out. But a lot of them have stopped flying. And hopefully the clearer board has done its job and most of them are down in the hive. So what I'm planning to do is, now that it's nice and late, I can come and take the roof off, take the super, take it somewhere away from the hive where we can then clear any bees that are in there off, then get it in the house, sharpish, shut the doors and windows. He's laughing.
I know, I'm...
They will smell us out and they will come for it.
I can smell it from here, it smells beautiful.
So I've got my don't worry, I will have a glove on this in a minute. I've got everything crossed that this is going to go really smoothly, although I've got a horrible feeling about it. If it wasn't Hive 1, I probably wouldn't be as worried.
Right.
But I know what Hive 1 can be like, and I know they're all in there.
If they sting me, they sting me.
Oh dear, I bet they're watching Line of Duty or something.
Probably are.
Right, let's get this done. If it wasn't this hive, I really don't think I'd be so nervous. I'm not scared so much of getting stung, one, because the stings don't really bother me that much, and the bee suits we've got are a lot thicker than the bees can sting through. I think it's more about the unknown. I've never done this before, so I don't know what to expect. I'm hoping that because it's a little bit cooler and getting dark, they'll not be too startled if I just go in quietly and quickly. Okay. So we've got the super. You can see there's not a lot of bees in there. You can see all the honey, especially on those middle frames. Let's get this super away from that hive before they notice. That went a million times better than I was expecting. I'm not going to take the veil off yet because there might still be some bees in there. I was given some advice. I'm given a lot of advice. I'm always after advice, and the advice was, because of how angry that hive can be, was to take the super on an evening when the bees are a lot calmer, and it makes perfect sense. During the day, a lot of the bees are out foraging, so you would think it would be a better idea to do it during the day when a lot of the bees are out, because then there's less to attack you, because they will get really defensive. They've been building this up for weeks. But no, there's absolutely no aggression. I don't know about you, Sean, I saw one bee
There were a lot starting to come out of the hive.
Was there?
At the entrance, yeah.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that. But yeah, I think the clearer board has just made such a difference. So I'm going to go through the frames now and just see if there are any bees. If there are any bees, I can just shake them off and they'll probably just fly back to the hive. So let's see if there's any bees on here. I'm actually feeling confident enough to take my gloves off. And my veil. In fact, no, I've just seen a bee. I've just seen a bee. So I can't hear anything, but I'm gonna have a quick look. Okay, let's have a quick look.
It smells beautiful.
It really, I really wish that I could kind of get you to smell. Just, it is delicious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's absolutely delicious. You can actually see we've got 1, 2, 3 frames where the honey's all stuck together. So I can't take these frames out without ripping the comb apart, and then the honey will just spill everywhere. Well, there was one bee, she came out and did you hear she flew straight back towards the hive, didn't she?
Yep.
So I think we're safe to take this one inside now. I was just talking about how fear of the unknown can make you nervous or anxious. I once read a quote, do something that scares you every day. Well, today I think that was it, and it's definitely given me the confidence I need for when it comes to doing the same with the other hives in a couple of weeks. I think I'm done for today. Tomorrow I've got an extractor to build and some honey to harvest. It's the next day. And weirdly, early September in the Highlands, it's 20 something degrees and sunny and a bit breezy. It's lovely weather. Didn't sleep very well last night. This is going to sound probably a little bit wet, but I actually felt really sorry for taking the honey off the bees. Just really guilty, and I don't know why. I mean, for a start, the honey I've taken is excess honey. They're not going to need it over the winter, because some people think, oh, it's cruel because the bees put so much work into it and then you take it away. Well, they do put so much work into it. In fact, generations of bees have put work into creating all that honey in that super. But they're not going to go without, because they create their own stores in the brood box in the hive below the super. And they are full. They have got like 4 or 5 frames just chock-a-block with honey. And that, I know from last year, is more than enough to get them even through a long cold winter. So there's nothing to worry about. They've got enough food. I just feel really guilty for taking it all off them, because I know what it's like if you put that much effort, and for them it is literally generations of bees, and then you take it away from them literally overnight, and I just feel really bad for them. I think I even put a tweet on social media about giving them it back because I felt so guilty. But anyway, it's done now. I did have nightmares about them coming after me, but in reality they haven't. Today is all about, well, to start with, I'm going to give the kitchen a deep clean. Once I've done that, I'm going to give all the accessories and bits and pieces and tools and utensils that I'm going to be using today a really good clean. And then I'm going to be uncapping the honey and extracting it from the frames and filtering it and jarring it, hopefully, if everything goes to plan. When I say I'm deep cleaning the kitchen, don't judge that it's normally proper manky, because it's not. We keep a really clean house, honestly. But I'm doing the kitchen just to make sure that it's spotless before I start extracting any honey. And before I can do that, I need to build the extractor. So here is my honey extractor. I've not even taken it out of the box yet. We've had it since last year. We got it when we got the first hives. And we only had 2 hives at that point, so we weren't expecting that much honey. So we got this extractor because, as you'll see, it's quite small. So it looks quite big. It can fit 4 frames. Well, that's what it said, but I've had a look inside And I think it means for big frames, like the brood size frames. My super frames are a little bit smaller, and I think we might be able to get more than that in. But before we do any of that, I've got the instructions, and I've got some bits and pieces, and I need to put it all together. It was really easy to build actually. All I had to do was put the legs on the handle and this honey gate at the front. The only tool I needed was a 14mm socket wrench just to tighten the bolts up on the legs and this handle. The gate, it just tightens itself basically, so there's no problem there. Instructions are great and it feels pretty sturdy, to be honest. I'm quite impressed. Now, before we put any honey in it, it needs a really good clean. So I'm going to take it outside, give it a spray down inside and give it a good old wash and a rinse out with water. It's a bit of a breezy day. Chickens are out and making quite a bit of noise. So I brought it outside. I'm going to give it a good spray down with lots of antibacterial stuff. I'm going to give it a wash out with some hot water, then a rinse out with some cold water. I'm going to dry it off the best I can, and then take it back inside and it'll be nice and clean and ready for some honey. It's a bit of a coincidence really that I'm here with the hose pipe right on the spot where one day, if I manage to save enough pocket money, I want to get a hot tub. But I've got to clean today. In fact, I think I've spent more time cleaning today than I have in the last month. But I need to make sure everything's spotless and ready for harvesting the honey. Finally, the kitchen, the extractor and all the bits and pieces I need are ready. So let's show you what I'm going to be using to get to the honey. So first of all is this is an uncapping knife. It basically does exactly what it says. So imagine this is full of honey and we're going to use this to slice the wax capping off the honey so that we can get to the honey before we put it in the extractor. We've also got this, which is a little bit finer. So if there's frames that haven't got all wax capping on or we miss some, then we can use this and basically pick the wax out that way. That's what that one's for. Once we've got that off, we put the frames into the extractor. That's going to be the fun bit. Once we've got the honey in the bottom of the extractor, we're going to filter it. So the way we're going to filter it is, you can see this has got like a fine mesh. And we're going to put this on top of this bucket like that. It actually fits on really well. And then we're going to put that under the tap on the extractor. Open the honey gate and the honey will come through that filter into the bucket. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to give it a secondary filter using this, which is muslin cloth. It's just basically a finer version of this. Now I don't know whether I'm just going to put it over there so it kind of double filters it straight away, or I'm going to filter it twice. I might just filter it through that to start with and then see what it's like, and then if it needs another filter I can always put it through this, and that is really ultra fine, so there'll be nothing left after that. Once the honey is in the bucket, I'm going to weigh the bucket using these, which are just like fisherman scales. So if we have a look, you can see that says 0. So let's weigh the bucket, and the bucket weighs 30 grams. So we can take that away from the weight when it's got the honey in, and we'll know how much it all weighs. So once the honey is in the bucket, I'm going to check again its water content using this, the refractometer. Do you remember this? So we'll just spread a little bit of honey on this slide, close the lens, we'll have a look through the viewfinder, and that will tell us exactly how much water content is in there. Remember, we want it less than 20% so that I can call it honey. Ideally it wants to be less than 18%. Remember, the readings I took were, one was 16 point something and one was 17 point something. So I'm confident that the water content's going to be really low, which will be a good sign. The other things I'm using, this, can you tell what that is? That's quite easy. That is so that we can scrape any honey that's in the bucket when we start doing the jarring. And here are the jars that I'm going to be using. I've gone for square jars. These will hold, I'm not sure yet, but between probably 200 and 300 grams of honey. I like the square jar. I've done a mock-up of it on the computer of the label, because I've already designed the label. And there's square labels, and it will kind of wrap around. So there'll be the front part, and then it will wrap around the side. Hopefully, we can get all the honey from the super through the extractor, through the filters, and into the jars by the end of today. I wanted to show you the difference between one of these empty super foundation frames, these are the ones we put in the honey supers, and this one, which is a full one. It's taking both hands to lift it up. This is packed full of honey. Let's weigh them and see what the difference is, see what a full one weighs. So this empty one, about 140 grams. Okay, let's swap it over and put this big heavy one on. Wow. Just under 1.8 kilos. So if we take off the 140 grams, what's that? 1,640 something. So 1.6.5 kilos of wax and honey. Right. Got the frames ready, got my uncapping knife ready. I've got another filter over a bucket in the sink, and I'm going to use that to catch all the wax so that any honey that's in the wax capping falls through the filter into the bucket too, so that we're not losing any honey. Right, let's do this. It's the first time I've ever cut through a frame like this, which is why it might look a bit clumsy. I think I was expecting it to be a lot softer, like cutting through butter. But obviously it's wax, so it's going to be a bit firmer. And I'm surprised how much honey is coming off with that capping. I'm so glad I've got the sieve and bucket to collect it all. Wow, that is, oh my God, just look at that. Beautiful, that is absolutely beautiful. I wish you could smell what I can smell right now. Wow. So this one, I've got quite a bit at the bottom that the knife won't go under, so I'm just using this fork to get that off. You see how easy that is? Just to pick these bits out, and I'll put those in there. I just want to get as much open as I can, so that the extractor can do its job really well. Oh, it's just dripping out. Oh my God, that's delicious. I think the trick to using the uncapping knife is just to go slow and steady. But that aroma of the honey, it just hits you, it's overwhelming. And I can only describe it as like the richest vanilla caramel with floral tones, just the sweetest, most natural fragrance I've ever experienced. One by one, I'm adding the uncapped frames into the extractor, and it's already dripping out onto the bottom. I just wish I could climb in there. I've got 5 out of the 8 frames done. So the wax is off and they're in the extractor. And it's weird because you know when you can hear a tap dripping and like how annoying that normally is. So it's really quiet in here and I can hear the dripping, or it's not the tap dripping, it's the honey from the wax cappings in the bucket in the sink. And it's the honey dripping into the bucket, and I can also hear the honey dripping from the frames that I've put in the extractor, and that's already dripping onto the bottom of the extractor. Again, I know I keep going on about the smell, but it is just, oh, it's so unbelievable. It's so sweet. And I'm having to keep the windows closed because we have bees near the house in one of the apiaries here. And if they get scent of all the honey in the kitchen, they'll be straight in here. So it's actually really warm in here because I've got the windows closed. Right, so I've got 3 frames left to do. I've got a bit of an issue with these 3 frames because the bees have actually connected the 3 frames together with wax. So I'm going to have to take all 3 out together and try and separate them with the uncapping knife and just see what happens. It could be that honey just goes everywhere, or it might actually be okay. Let's have a go. Well, I've got them all. They are proper stuck together, all 3 frames, and you can see right in the middle how they've kind of sealed them together. Even underneath, you can see from underneath as well that it's just stuck solid. There's no movement in it whatsoever, so I'm going to get the knife in there and see what I can find. I can actually see honey if you look towards the bottom on this side where my thumb is. You can probably just see honey in there. Right, I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to try and cut down one side and it should release this this outer frame. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. It doesn't look actually like there's any honey. No, there isn't. There's no honey on that side at all. That is weird. But yet there's honey on that side. So I'm going to put that down there and come back to that. And then this one has kind of uncapped itself if you look. So I'm just going to get rid of the other part there. Wow, this is thick, absolutely thick with honey. So I've done that, so now I'm going to try and do the same on this side. And I think it's going to be the same on this side. Oh no, this is thick with honey as well. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh wow. So there's actually not much honey on that side either. So let's just take that to one side as well. Just pop that there. Oh, I've got honey going everywhere. Right, that should be okay there for a sec. It's just how they've built the comb is a little bit weird. If I show you this side, you can see it looks a bit like an orange, like you know when you sometimes open an orange and the segments are not quite right. I think it's a little bit like that. But that's uncapped, so that can go in the extractor. I'm normally such a neat and tidy person, and this is just a mess. I think it's impossible to process honey without mess. I'm actually quite looking forward to cleaning the kitchen afterwards. Right, so the 8 frames of honey we had from the super are now gone. If you actually look in the bottom of the super, that's why I put a plastic bag down last night, because you can actually see where honey has dripped off the comb onto there. So that's done its job there. Now you might be asking, why is there only 8 frames and why have you harvested the honey when there's 2 spare frames that they might have filled with honey? Well, the hive we've taken them from had basically stopped storing honey. We could see that because the 2 spare frames weren't filling up at all over the past couple of weeks. And we know that they've got enough stores of their own, so we're not worried about that. But this is mostly to test out how to do it. What I didn't want to do was get maybe 5, 6, 7 supers with like 60, 70 frames and then find out I was doing something wrong or get stuck. And it would have been really stressful if you've got all those to do and you've never done it before, because this is the first time I've ever taken honey. So I thought, to play it safe, this one's ready, the bees are ready to let it go, so it's easier for me to process 8 frames. Then if anything goes wrong I can learn from it, and I've not kind of put the other 60 or 70 frames at risk and lost everything. So if this all goes okay, it'll give me a bit more confidence, I think, when the rest of the honey comes in maybe 2 or 3 weeks time. And it should be a bit easier, although no less messy, I won't doubt. You won't believe how much I'm holding my excitement in right now. This, for me, I think is going to be the favourite bit. So all the frames, all 8 frames are in these cages inside the extractor. This is the gearbox, this is the handle thing, and when I turn this it's going to start spinning them round, and hopefully all the honey will come flying out of the cells onto the sides of this tank and then down to the bottom. And then once we've done that for a few minutes, I'm going to turn the frames around and hopefully honey on the other side will come out. Oh, I love this bit. It was all going too well, wasn't it? Put the frames in the extractor, started extracting, but it wasn't extracting. There's like that much in the bottom of the extractor, but the frames don't seem to be emptying, and I can't spin it too fast, because if I spin it too fast, the comb starts to break up or blow out. I don't know what the term is, but it breaks it and it's not good. So I can't do it too fast. So you're supposed to kind of start slow one way and then speed up a bit and do the other side. I'm doing all that right, but there's only little bits coming out, which is making me think that it is actually all heather honey in here. And the bits that I saw that weren't solid were obviously just the kind of not quite ready bits around the edges, the nectar, where there was a lot of water content still in it. I mean, still low enough to be called honey. So I've got a bit of a predicament now, because I've got 8 frames of honey that I can't extract using this extractor. It's actually a good thing in a way. If you remember, I was only saying a few minutes ago why I'm only doing 8 frames to start with and not all the other supers. And this is exactly why I did that, because if something like this happened, at least I haven't got another 70 frames behind me waiting to be done. Right, see what I can do. It doesn't take much to make me anxious, and all of a sudden I'm panicking because we've got this extractor that's not going to be of any use to us now. But even more worrying, I've potentially got another 70 or more frames of honey that I'm not going to be able to extract. I've got an idea what I need to do, but because I'm a little bit anxious, I decided to get in touch with a couple of beekeeping friends just to see if they agreed with me. The problem with heather honey is it's really thick. It's actually like a jelly. So if you're trying to extract it from the kind of extractor I've got, it doesn't really move out. Now you can agitate the honey, which loosens it up a little bit, and it's more likely to come out. But that's still not working. We've just tried that as well. So we need some sort of press. Now, this is just like to show you what I mean. This is our potato ricer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of the wax that we took off. You remember when we took the wax off the frames? I'm going to put some of this wax into the potato ricer, like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it down to show you what happens when we press it. You ready? You can see the honey being pressed and coming out of the bottom. I think I've got as much as I'm going to get. I don't think I've got a choice than to press most of it out the best I can, which I've been doing, and I've got quite a bit in the extractor, which I'm now going to open the honey gate and filter it into the bucket. The extractor's more or less empty now. I think I got probably, I don't know, maybe 2 kilos of honey out of this. It doesn't sound a lot. It does sound a lot. It's actually not a lot, because after I crushed the rest of the honeycomb and filtered it and got honey out of there, next step is to put the honey from the filter with the bucket and weigh it and see what we've got. I've learned that the feet of extractor legs can be quite sharp when you stub your toe on them and you're not wearing any shoes and socks. I've also learnt that my honey from this apiary is real, true heather honey. I think the reason I thought it might not be is because when I did the refractometer test, it was showing at like 16-17% water content, and from what I've read, heather honey can have higher water content, like 22-23%. And so I don't know, I think something instinctively made me think, well, it's not heather honey then. And because the hive where I got this super from is the furthest from the heather than the other apiaries are, I don't know, I think something just inside me maybe thought it's not heather honey. And it is heather honey. I left the honey to filter through the ultrafine steel sieve last night, and then through an extra finer muslin cloth. Of course, I forgot that the kitchen was going to cool down, and then the honey started turning more into a gel as it cooled down. So instead of me waking up this morning to a bucket of smooth filtered honey, it was all still sat on top of the muslin cloth the same as I left it last night. So I'm going to very carefully try and pull this cheesecloth from under these cable ties, and I've got to try and keep the rest of the honey from dropping back into the bucket. It should be quite easy to do. I'm doing all right so far. Try not to let that fall out. And there's not much left in this muslin cloth, to be honest. It really is just bits of wax and the honey foam, so there's not going to be much to squeeze through, I don't think, but we want every last drop. So there you go, you can just see the last of it just kind of dripping through there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the top, a bit like an icing bag, you know, when you're doing icing on a cake. I'm just going to really tightly twist this and push the honey down towards the bottom. You should start to see it dripping out. Here we go. There we go. That's a good mouthful there. There we go. That is very foamy. All done. Right, if you remember right at the beginning, I weighed the bucket and it came in at exactly 30 grams. So all the honey has now been filtered twice. I'm going to put the lid back on the bucket and I'm going to weigh the bucket using the same scales, and that will tell us exactly how much honey we've got. 7,430 grams, which is 7.43 kilos. Take away the 30 grams that the bucket weighs, means we have 7.4 kilos of honey just from those 8 frames. I'm going to leave it to settle for a few hours before I start putting it in jars. But before I put the lid on to leave it to settle, I just want to test the water content using my refractometer. I'm still not sure if I'm saying that right. So what I need to do is put some honey on this little lens here, put that back on, have a look through it, and that will tell me how much water we've got left in there. If you remember, to start with, it was between about 16 and 17%. Let's see if it's any different. Whether you call it a refractometer or a refractometer, I don't mind, as long as the water percentage is under 20%. And that means I can legally call this my first honey. Anything less than 18.6% means there's virtually no chance of it fermenting. Let's have a look. I reckon that's about 17.5% at most, which is really good. These things are great if you're getting into beekeeping and want to know the water content of your honey. It's called a refractometer. Still not sure I'm saying it right. There's quite a few. You can get them on a lot of online sites, and they range from sort of 15-20 quid upwards. I think you get what you pay for. So I paid a little bit more than the cheaper ones, but I think the quality and the reading is probably a lot more accurate. Right, I'm going to leave the honey to settle for a few hours. Going to grab some lunch, and then this afternoon we're going to start jarring it up. I've had my lunch and it wasn't honey. Although I have been eating plenty of honey over the last 2 days. Right, so I'm going to jar the honey up this afternoon. I've actually chosen these square jars. I really like them when I was looking for what sort of jars to use. And I think they're a little bit different. They're a little bit classy. I've got like a muted gold colour for the lids, which kind of goes with the honey. And I've been designing the labels myself over the last couple of weeks, playing about with quite a few designs, and I've chosen one that I really like. I haven't had them printed yet because I wanted to know what sort of honey I was going to get, whether it was going to be wildflower or heather honey or a combination, and I didn't want to get labels printed that wasn't right. But now I know it's heather honey, I can get the labels that I've got designed and ready printed out. The labels are a funny thing because by law you've got to have certain information on there, like who's made it, like us, what sort of honey it is, the weight of the jar, the best before date, even though honey lasts forever. And then things like, there's even like a warning that babies under 12 months aren't supposed to eat honey because it can contain some sort of botulism. Sounds scary. Nothing to do with the cleanliness of our kitchen, which is where I'm going now to put some honey in these. $26.5 jars of heather honey. So we're having the half because of all that work it's taken to get it. I'm actually full of honey. I've probably had about 2 jars of honey over the past 2 days anyway.
Yes, actually.
I do like it so much. It has scared me because it's taken 2 days to process 8 frames, so not even one full super box. It's taken 2 days.
But it's your first time.
I know, but it's the thought that next season we could have 100 supers. So that's 1,000 frames. And it's taken me 2 days to do 8. So I'm a little bit itchy because we've got midges out and I've got my shorts on still. So yeah, that is frightening me a little bit, that next year we've got so many supers and I don't know what to do. I think the obvious answer is to change the equipment. So this extractor that I've used, the Viva extractor, it is really good for what it is, but it's more suited to wildflower honey.
Runny honey.
Runny honey, that's it. It would do a brilliant job. The reason is that heather honey, as you've seen, is just so thick. And you can't spin it too fast because it damages the comb, as we showed you. So I think I'm going to have to change that and get something that's a bit more appropriate for heather honey. If you're interested in that extractor, I've put a link down in the video description so you can check that out. Sorry, I'm getting bitten to death down here. So you can check that out. There's a link in the video description. What we need is something that presses them a little bit more. So I think I'm going to look for new equipment that presses the honey out rather than spins it out. I think what we're also going to do from next year is also sell it as cut comb.
Yes, that'd be nice.
We'll basically just cut the honeycomb, take the wax capping off, cut the honeycomb and sell it as cut comb.
Yes.
And what we can also do is sell it as chunks in jars. So we get a jar and we put a chunk of honeycomb in there and just top it up with honey.
Yeah.
We can sell it like that, as well as in normal jars too. So what have I learned from the last couple of days?
Not to eat so much honey.
No, I don't feel sick at all. I'm actually enjoying it. I think the first thing is what I've already mentioned, is the equipment. I need to change the equipment to be able to get the heather honey. That's number one. Number two, I've learned that it doesn't matter how much research you do on getting honey out of frames.
It never goes to plan.
It never goes to plan. Number three, I think, is the mess. You cannot prepare yourself. It gets everywhere. I have never been as sticky since my days dancing in gold cages in gay bars in Leeds.
It's like super glue.
It really is. It gets everywhere. And four, Otis loves honeycomb. he ate quite a lot of honeycomb yesterday when we left a batch of honeycomb where he could get to it. And he's got it all in his fur, bless him, but he likes honeycomb. Now, I know what you're asking yourself. How can I get hold of your honey?
You can't, because I've got hold of it.
Well, we've only got 26.5 jars.
At the moment.
And Sean's taking a few jars down to his family when he goes and sees them in a few days. And we've got to give some to the people around the community because we promised to do that. So I don't think we're going to have much left from this batch. But we are going to auction jar number 1, not that one.
Not this one.
The first jar that we poured. We're going to auction that off for charity. We'll give you some more details on that. The best way to keep up to date on when we get the next batch in and we're ready to sell is to follow us on social media. So on the one formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook and Instagram and Threads, because we're a lot more up to date on those than waiting a week on a vlog. So we might announce something on social media before we announce it in a vlog.
Usually we do.
Yeah, I think all the details have just been on the screen. But also subscribe to our channel if you're not already, because that way, if you hit the notifications bell as well, YouTube will let you know every time we release a new video, so you can keep up with the news as well. I think, are we done yet?
I hope so.
I am absolutely William Shatnered. Hi. I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. It's been quite a long one this week.
It has, yes.
You've been all right. You've been sat upstairs on your computer laughing at me.
I've been gardening.
Yeah, he's been gardening, really. We will let you know on the honey. Until next time, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.